Welcome to the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday morning program. I almost said virtual. So we got so used to that. We want to welcome you. We want to also welcome our virtual audience because I know we have folks that are joining us virtually. So I want to welcome everyone. I am Mary Johnson, and I'm going to be your moderator today, along with Laura McClady. We also have facilitators that work along with us, and we have Ms. Sarita Cheryl. She does our prayer. We always have prayer every Tuesday. We have Natalie McGarrett. She keeps the time. We have Jackie Walton Edwards and Carlinia Ivory Canty. They're not with us today. And we have Winston Robinson. He's not with us today, but he's a brand new father. Wife just had a baby, so he's on daddy duty right now. We also have Steve Johnston. Steve takes care of our website and also anything that's on our website and all this technology that you see going on here today. So, do we have anyone here for the first time? I don't think so. Okay. Well, I knew our guest, but could you just introduce yourself?
Sir, good morning, everyone. Jared Keaton here from the Alliance Center for Education, formerly known as the Bethlehem Center. And I'll let my Community Relations Director introduce herself.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Felicia Richardson. I'm the Director of Family and Community Engagement with Alliance Center for Education.
Okay. Well, they introduced themselves, but I'll reintroduce you, our speakers. You all can come up here. Are you going to be presenting? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we have Mr. Jared Keaton. He is the CEO of Alliance Center for Education. Yes. And as they said, it's the former Bethlehem Center of Charlotte, and I think all of us are familiar with Bethlehem Center of Charlotte. So, and I didn't even know that the name had changed. Okay, even though I've heard of the Center for Education. Okay. He's going to be presenting to us, and following his presentation, we're going to have questions from the audience, okay? So we're going to wait until he has completed his presentation, and hopefully we'll have enough time for announcements at the end. If not, send your announcement to Steve at our website, and I guess that's it. And just keep in mind that although you see a few people here, there are lots of people that are watching, okay? So we may get started. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sarita.
Yes.
Please bless us with prayer.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Please bow your heads. Those of you who won't join us in prayer, just be time for meditation, please. Dear Heavenly Father, peace and blessings as we assemble here today. We're grateful for each of our gatherings and gratitude. We offer gratitude to you this morning. We're thankful to have voices that reach others. We're happy to serve our community near and far. Help us to stand together today and every day. Open our minds and hearts to what is right for everyone. The will of the program shall be accomplished in our hearts, in our communities, in our county, in our state, yes, these United States and the world. Let us stay together. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. Well, good morning again, everyone. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Jared Keaton with the Alliance Center for Education. Just want to talk to you this morning a little bit about where we've been, where we are, and where we look to head in the future on behalf of children and families of Mecklenburg County. So first, I'll start with a little bit of history. As you all know, we were formerly known as the Bethlehem Center. We were founded here in Charlotte in what used to be the Brooklyn community in 1940. And back in 1940, we had a one single unit home that focused on services for women in need in Uptown Charlotte. And in the 40s, we started to work with children because the women had to enter the workforce. And so that really became the focus of the Bethlehem Center, and still is to this day, is women, children, and families. In the 60s, Bethlehem Center started Mecklenburg County's first free kindergarten before kindergarten was a part of the school system. And then that grew into a presence with the Head Start program. In 1983, we became the grantee for Mecklenburg County's Head Start program, which is the granddaddy or the godfather of quality pre-K and comprehensive family services for families of young children across the country, and really a model for like sister programs across the world. Through the services of Bethlehem Center, many lives have been touched. We also have services for older children, which we've had that since the 50s. Bethlehem Center provides not only the services for after school and summer day camp for young children ages K through 12, but also we provide services for their families. With our family services, we focus on engagement first in the child's education, whether it's a preschool student that's receiving their education and social emotional support with us, or when they go into CMS or a charter school or a private school that may have scholarship. We also provide the after school enrichment for that family. So we engage that family. We take their interests, their goals for their students, as well as help them understand what's going on at school during the day, and support them in making sure that their goals for their children are centered in their child's education, and that their child is receiving individualized services. And so we focus on the whole child as we support the parent's role as the child's first teacher. We also make sure that families have other supports that they may need in terms of their own goals for themselves. We look at them as not only as advocates for their students, but also advocates for themselves and what they want to see in community. So we help them lift up their voices. We're not their voice, but we help them lift up their voices. And just like forums like this, we're very interested in making sure families are civically engaged as they see fit, and that they are able to advocate for the things that they want to see within their community. We also help them with support in terms of emergent needs. So anything that families may need in terms of food and other sustenance, housing, whether they need better housing, if they're without a home, we help them secure housing, as well as financial literacy. Most of those services in terms of helping them, supporting them with their needs are done through partnership. Partnership is a huge part of who we are and have been since 1940. So we don't have the ideal that Alliance Center for Education is here to be all things to all people. But we do take we take our responsibility seriously to understand all of what's in the county. We have family case managers, Ms. Richardson, in terms of community engagement, to help us make sure that we keep in touch on behalf of the families and then build those bridges. At last count, we have some 21 formal and informal agreements with other organizations that help us meet those families' needs. So again, we don't try to be all things to all people. We do make sure that we understand. We assess the community's needs and then make sure that we're responsive to those needs in terms of how we serve. As we move forward into the future, we just underwent this past year, or actually last year in 2021, because we're halfway through 2022 at this point. But in 2021, we partnered with an organization called Next Stage, and Next Stage helped us kind of think about leveraging the legacy of Bethlehem Center and what we have been to the community for the last 82 years, leveraging some of the unique assets that we have, and I'll talk a little bit about those unique assets in a minute, and then thinking about how do we position the organization to best serve the children of the future. as well as some of the emerging needs that the community or some of the emerging challenges that the community is experiencing right now. And so some of the big ideas that came out of that process of kind of taking a second look at where we are and where we need to be for the future. One is that we have this unique asset of an 82-year-old organization that has gained, because of its dedication and the folks that came before me. I've been with the agency 23 years this October, but we've had a long and deep, rich history. I was chatting with Mr. Johnston earlier before the meeting about Thomas Moore, who was one of our, not only a child in Bethlehem Center himself, but also went on to become a case manager and a camp counselor with the students over on Remount and in Southside community, but also went on to become a college professor and came back to give back to the organization through his music and his fellowship. So we have a rich history. And he's just one of many great examples of the legacy of Bethlehem Center. But through that, we built trust in the community. And as organizations grow, and as we decide and determine how we'll try to meet the challenges of the future, scaling our reach and being bigger and broader in terms of how we are able to impact the community, sometimes you lose that trust. And so part of what we want to focus on is doubling down on the things that make us a trust-built organization as we continue to scale the organization so we can to expand that impact. One of the other big ideas is that we have childcare centers. We've got 9 of them right now. Through a little bit of partnership building, we hope to have 10 this year and possibly even 11 in terms of our partnerships with after-school students. So having 11 different locations within Charlotte Mecklenburg where we contact families and children on a daily basis. All of our, and this is definitely strategic. We try to stay humble, but we will take credit for some of the good ideas that we have as a collective, staff collective, but that we're strategic about making sure that we're in community. We don't place facilities, and try to bus kids across town. We make sure that we're in the places where we need to be, where our families are, so that that access is not an issue or as much of an issue. Now we know we need more slots, so that there's an access, but a challenge. But in terms of our locations, that is one of our assets. So one of the challenges is thinking about the original Bethlehem Center in Brooklyn as a community center. The Bethlehem Center location that came up was built in 1958 that probably most of you are familiar with on Remount and Baltimore Avenue. Those were community centers. And in those community centers, not only did we provide our direct services, but we literally had some of those partners that I talked about a little bit earlier. Well, they actually served alongside us out of those community centers. And so part of one of the big ideas is looking at our current centers in the communities across the city in that same way and working with partners that provide different services to the same communities and having some of those folks come alongside us again and co-locate. Right now, folks do come in, other service providers come into those centers, but we're actually thinking about having them housed there. So we're working through some unique partnerships to leverage those centers as community assets. Although the surrounding community generally sees Alliance Center for Education locations as their locations, and that's what we want. And so we want to continue to leverage those assets in terms of our partnerships. And then finally, as you all know, I was fortunate enough to be a part of helping Mecklenburg County start a universal pre-K. That's something that we've heard a lot of talk about. Being in the preschool business, they were talking about universal pre-K back in the 90s when I came to Bethlehem Center. And now through the work of concerned citizens of the county commission, the county manager, and a lot of partners, we have MEC Pre-K. And so MEC Pre-K is on its way to helping us be universal in partnership with other programs like Head Start and NC Pre-K. We will soon have universal Pre-K in Mecklenburg County. Well, that's the year right before they go to kindergarten. What about families that need services for their infants and their toddlers and their 3-year-olds? And so part of our plan, and the third really big idea in our plan, is how do we create space to serve more infants, toddlers, and 3s? And so that's a big part of our strategic plan, is focusing our Head Start dollars to be able to expand our services to infant, toddlers, and 3s, and then continue to leverage the county dollars to serve the pre-K students. So we're talking about an actual expansion. And we also are looking at ways to expand our other programs as well. We got some great news last night in terms of being able to serve more K-12 students in after school and summer camp. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is we know that the workforce in Mecklenburg County is diverse. We know that the needs of the needs and the families are diverse in Mecklenburg County. So part of what we want to do is do our best work in partnership with folks like UNC Charlotte, with CPCC, and other local universities. Johnson C. Smith. This is a great community for partnership with college and universities. And so we're looking to leverage those relationships and other cultural organizations that serve and focus on other communities like the Latinx community. So the Latin American Coalition, Charlotte Bilingual Preschool, bringing folks like that together to work on the workforce of the future, and then leverage that trust that we have, the assets that we have. Something I didn't mention that's probably relevant to this group. We are very civic minded and engaged as a nonprofit. We receive funding from all levels of government, and we leverage that, I think, in a quality way. We're not just, we don't just run it in a cookie cutter way, but we work with our financial partners, with the city, the county, the state of North Carolina, and the Office of Head Start and the Department of Health and Human Services at the federal level to make sure that we're providing innovative services. And so we cherish those relationships, and also through that, we built relationships with some of our elected officials as well. So those are the kind of big ideas coming from Alliance Center for Education. The kind of subset of that is, obviously, to do what we do, we need funds. We need funds to sustain who we are. We need funds to advance and progress, to serve more and to serve better as we move into the future, and to react and respond to the ever-changing needs of the community. So in order to do that, we've got to get our brand out. We've got to make sure that the community understands that we're still here, but we're here in a big way, and we have a great vision for the future of Mecklenburg County in terms of its youngest citizens. And so part of that was, when you say Bethlehem Center, those in community, they know that name. They understand what it means, and they know the legacy behind it. As we work with those that aren't from the communities that we serve and the folks that we partner with directly, that doesn't tell them who we are. And so that was really, as we work with the United Methodist Church, who are our founders, many of the Bethlehem centers, Charlotte was not the only place to have a Bethlehem center. And many of the Bethlehem centers had changed their names, not to move away in any way from their mission, their Christ-centered relationships that they have built and developed and continue to develop, but to help explain to those that can help support financially, what do you do? And so simply Alliance we grabbed that, and this was work with a facilitator and our board and community members that talks about the hug. So if you think about, we form a hug with school and school children. One arm is the work that we do preschool with those children, and the other arm is hugging school in terms of when they enter school and after school and school age development, Also, that alliance talks about the alliance that we have to form on behalf of the student, the community, the family and the community to serve the student. So that just a little bit, and then education is our core strategy. So that just centers who we are right there in our name. And so part of the work that we're doing is getting that name out. So this, at a high level, that's where we've been, where we are today. We have those 11 locations across the city. We serve upwards of 800 students every year in those 11 locations, and that is, again, that's looking to grow even more this upcoming school year. And we have big plans to double the number of infants and toddlers we serve right now. Just shy of 70 infants and toddlers. We look to double that in 2023, 2024. So it's just a little bit about us and who we are and where we're headed.
Okay, thank you so much.
Did I interrupt?
Yes.
First thing I said to Mr. Keaton was that we're all guinea pigs from now in this room. I apologize. We have these wonderful PowerPoint. It's right there, but it's not up there. So if we get it working, fine. If not, it will be on the page of the forum website shortly, by 6. So continue. I apologize.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. And you did a great job. You pivoted and gave your presentation without the PowerPoint. So thank you so much for being able to do that.
Welcome.
Okay. And Laura, you have the first question.
Okay, my question is, to talk about your universal locations. Right now in Charlotte, especially on the west side and in the, I'm gonna say on South End, and even on South Tryon Street where it's the center is, Belmont Center is now. The one over there, I don't know, Greenmount Road. It's so much, the development is so different. And when you're talking about your universal locations, you said it's going to be 11 locations.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to know, how are you all going to identify the children and where you're going to get the children from? Because we know the transitions that's being made in the city to come to the centers and really be integrated.
So I think there's a couple of questions in there. One is, how do we identify as things are because they are rapidly changing. So how do we identify where the students are that are eligible for our services? And that's an excellent question. So part of what we do at a real high level is we conduct every 5 years and then follow up on it every year with updating our information, what's called a community needs assessment. That community needs assessment really looks at all aspects of who we are in terms of our the demographic served. So first is income eligible families. So we work with Charlotte Regional Business Alliance to make sure that we understand where families are that are eligible for our services from an income standpoint. We do some research with UNCC and Child Care Resources Incorporated to understand where families, kind of the overlay, if you think of how the intersection of those two things, where the families with children that are preschool and school age. And so we look at those demographics. We also stay in tune with city planning. And so as affordable housing, we're two of our partners, our Dream Key partners, formerly known as Charlotte Mecklenburg Housing Partners, and in Livian, formerly known as, everybody's changing the name, formerly known as Charlotte Housing Authority. And so we stay abreast of their initiatives in terms of where they're developing affordable housing across the city. The Harvest group that focuses on families that are in transition or individuals in transition. So just that community needs assessment really not only looks at the statistics from a census perspective, an income perspective, but also we incorporate folks that are also doing planning that serve the same demographics and where they're going. For an example, in 2000 and it's 2022, so 2017, we partnered for the first time with Dream Key Partners. As everybody may be aware, they were a partner of the city to help develop what's now called the Bright Walk community off of Old Statesville Road. And so they have a community that's mixed income, affordable housing there. And then they constructed a child care center where we provide child care services in that child care center. So there's some stability because that community, a lot like Southside Homes many, many years ago, and a lot like Brook Hill Homes many, many years ago, were built specifically for that purpose. We have a new partnership with Movement Charter, who also partners with Dream Key. So on Freedom Drive, which will be one of our newest locations, there's an affordable housing location from Dream Key. Movement Charter has a K-12, and then we'll be there to provide preschool there. So we're really looking to make sure that where families are moving to, where the housing is affordable and the need for services like ours are located, that we're staying abreast of those changes and making sure that we're making provision for childcare as we plan centers and facilities in the future.
Thank you.
Okay. I have a question here. The United Methodist Church, do they still support the centers even though they changed the name from Bethlehem?
Yes, ma'am. Great question. So first, the United Methodist Women were the division of the church that founded us. We still maintain a written covenant relationship with them, even though we're our own 501c3 organization. We have our own board and our own mission, but we have maintained that covenant relationship for the last 40 plus years. In that, we make sure that they understand what we're doing and how we're advancing the mission that they started, and two, we do part of that through shared governance. And so their local district chair and their conference chairperson both are standing board members on our board. So when we actually were talking about rebranding, the United Methodist Women were a part of that process and actually helped us decide on what the name would be moving forward. And absolutely, they still support us in multiple ways. The most significant is they help bring in supplies to our organization. In the spring, they did about 3 truckloads worth of supplies for our infants and toddlers that we serve: diapers, wipes, and as y'all know, those things are not very cheap. Even though my children are a little older, I remember how costly those are. And then through our budget, we purchased some of those supplies where the families were able to gain access to those supplies that they provided. And then in the fall, they'll do a big drive for supplies for our school supplies for our children, not only to consume in our programming, but also for the school-age children to take with them when they start school this year. And they also support us financially as well.
Yes.
I have a question. My mom, she used to work at the Bethlehem Center in the 70s.
Okay.
So I want to know, is the focus mainly on children now? Because they used to incorporate seniors, school-age kids will have like places to go. They have dances and fashion shows. Like, is it mostly based with children? Do you do extracurricular activities like for enrichment, or just so they can have things to do after school, not, just be out in the streets?
Right.
Because all of that was incorporated before.
Yes.
So across the street.
So the easy answer is yes, 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 no, no. So the enrichment that's really the centerpiece of who we are with our school-age students. So that absolutely is still continues to be interwoven into our after-school program with K-12 students. We've expanded that to add on college and career readiness, but we still have dance activities, music, all types of cultural. Matter of fact, I sat next to somebody on Friday that does a jazz program, so we're going to bring that to the kids. So enrichment is a huge part of our after-school program still to that. So that hasn't changed. Yes, we still are very much community focused in our services. And so we don't have, I hope I didn't misspeak earlier, we don't have a school for K-12 students. We're still a after school and summer day camp program where all of those enrichment, but we do also support after school enrichment as well. Seniors, we do not have a seniors program. We do serve seniors who are find themselves parenting for the second, maybe even the third generation within our family engagement services, and we do have programming that focuses on family or seniors that are providing guardianship for grandchildren or great nieces and things of that nature through our partnerships with Department of Social Services. But we do not have a seniors program anymore. When it comes to clothing and sustenance, as I was mentioning earlier, what we've done is we've deepened our partnerships for those that do that well. So just about all of the clothing organizations in Mecklenburg County that focus on that as in terms of their mission, as well as programs like baby bundles, beds for kids, crisis assistance ministries, and the Furniture Bank, Habitat for Humanity. So we partner with those organizations instead of slicing off a little bit of money that we could be using to do what we do well, and then holding hostage the services that they could be providing. We partner with them to bring what they do to us and vice versa, because they have clients that come to them that say, okay, well, this is great. You got my lights cut on. You've got a food voucher. If they're going to Loaves and Fishes, it's another partner of ours. But where am I going to put my child? And so then they referring in reverse back to us. So that's kind of the no part. But we still do that just through partnership, not direct service.
Okay, thank you. Natalie?
Good morning. Thank you for being here. And I want to add my prayers to Mary. You did a great presentation.
Thank you.
I have been riveted by everything you said. And I'm ready to vote for you to be mayor of Charlotte. You need to run this town.
Oh, no.
Great. You did mention one program that I was so interested in when they started talking about it, the universal pre-K. And I know we haven't really had an update on it, mostly because of COVID. We haven't been able to get as many people as we wanted to. How's that program going? I know it's really a limited number of children that they could service. How's it going now?
That's a great question. So just to give you a little bit background, as it was being created, well, it was created out of the county commission's early childhood executive committee. And that truly was a beautiful thing because it was a cross section of every aspect of child development. So not only those like us that are building and offering early ed systems, school systems and education, but also pediatricians, child psychologists. There's a great intersection that helped create MEC Pre-K. It was a 6-year plan, and the universality of it is to leverage not only its dollars to provide services through slots to private child care providers, but also continue to leverage NC Pre-K. NC Pre-K funds somewhere in the neighborhood just shy of 3,000 preschool students. Head Start, we're right at 556 preschool students. And then in Bright Beginnings, there's just over 3,000 pre-K students. That's CMS's Title I program. And so what MEC Pre-K, and then we have subsidies. So the Federal Child Care Administration sends in dollars through the state and then come down through the county and then helps provide subsidies for families to access high quality childcare as well. So we had those 4 assets already, probably serving somewhere in the neighborhood of about 7,000, 8,000, maybe 9 collectively, about 9,000 students already. And so MEC Pre-K was then to layer on top of those assets to make it truly universal. Most of Head Start, Head Start and NC Pre-K and subsidy are income-based largely. And then Bright Beginnings is developmental need. So then how about the families that are working hard and they don't qualify, but they still can't afford, because childcare just ran this number Friday for another presentation. Average childcare for Mecklenburg County is $14,000 a year. Poverty level, now this is federal. One of the things that I'm advocating for is that poverty level needs to be more localized, because, and you'll understand when you hear what I'm about to say. Poverty level is federalized, so it just takes an average of the incomes across the United States, and then they say, okay, so poverty level for a family of 4 is $26,000. We know that $26,000 cannot support a family in Mecklenburg County. We know that. You will, that might, if you can find somewhere that's $1,000 a month, that might pay your rent. So if you're paying $1,000 a month in rent, particularly if you don't qualify for any other services, then that's all your money, or half your money, $12,000. So now if you got one of those 3 children that's in preschool, that's another $12,000, $13,000. So how are you going to eat? How are you going to keep the lights on? How are you going to communicate? So all those things. So one of the things with universal pre-K is we know that there are families that don't qualify for Head Start because $26,000, that's our federal, we have to use the federal poverty guidelines. So what about those families that make $30,000, still have 3 kids and a single mom or single dad trying to raise those kids? What about them? So that was the goal of universal pre-K, is to start to help serve those families, and then beyond, to make sure that every 4-year-old, 4 or 5-year-old in Mecklenburg County has pre-K before they go into kindergarten. It's done in community. So unlike other settings, these classrooms are not in schools. They're actually in the communities where people live. So it's a great partnership of the public with private childcare providers. The first year it launched, we launched, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,200 slots that first year back in, so this is year 4. So that would have been 2018. And so we've added about 600 slots for the year 2. And then in year 3, 2020, something happened. They called it COVID. And so that goal kind of got slowed down a little bit. So they added about 200 slots that year. And last year we didn't add any because of COVID. The demand was down. Parents weren't ready many parents weren't ready to put their child back in service. We introduced some hybrid services. We did the same thing in Head Start. This year they decided, so we're still at just over 2,000. They decided not to advance it any further. And so next year we're looking to ramp back up with another 600 slots. In terms of the impact, it's going very well. Early on, the child outcomes are very high for MEC Pre-K, and they partnered with programs like Head Start to make sure that their services are comprehensive as well. And so we help them make sure that they've got family engagement built into what they do, as well as thinking about other supports that young children might need at the classroom level and in the home. So I hope that answered your question. We're not quite at our goal. I think the goal was somewhere around close to 4,000 students in MEC Pre-K, and we're just over 2,000. But some of that was because of COVID. So I don't know that we'll what the remedy will be to help catch up in years 4 and 5 and 6. But right now they're planning to add another 200 students next year.
Okay. as I listen to you, this sounds like a real success story, and I love it. But it has to come from the people.
That's right.
You said you've been there for 32,
23.
23 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And my question is, how many employees do you all have covering all of this area that you have to cover? And what's an average longevity of your the employees that work for this alliance? And how did you all fare in terms of retaining those employees over the COVID?
Great questions. So first question is, how many employees do we have what it takes to get this done? So pre-COVID, and we're headed back to this level because we had to shrink a little bit during COVID in terms of the number of children being served because we just didn't have as many families that wanted to put their children in in-person services. But we're headed back to just shy of 170 employees across the city. We fared okay. This is a good segue to your last question. We fared okay. We turned over somewhere in the neighborhood of about 38 of the 170, just shy of 170 employees. Most of them were young or younger, I'd say 35 and under, folks that were childbearing age themselves and or already had young children in the home. Some of them decided to stay home when COVID hit and not return back to work. Some of them did eventually return back, but the average age of the average tenure of our staff is just shy of 12 years. Now that's coming down a little bit as we replace those that we lost during the pandemic. But many of our staff, we've got one of our, just chatting with one of our infants and toddler teachers a couple of weeks ago. She's been with the organization as a parent and as a teacher, went from parent to bus monitor and now lead teacher. She's been with the organization a collective of 37 years. Her two, she has twins. They're now in both of them work in education. One's a teacher and another is in financial education, that are now in their 30s, were students in Head Start back when she got connected with us. She loved it so much that she wanted to come on part-time, and then we helped her go back to school. We've got multiple staff that are very much have a story similar to that. So we do have a pretty deep tenure with many of our team members. Some of them are beginning to retire. And so we got a growing void in terms of all of that institutional knowledge. And so we're trying to do our best work to continue to collect that knowledge and help them leverage them as assets that they are on behalf of the future of the organization.
So is your curriculum what you teach, and even like nutrition wise, is that based on national or statewide diet or curriculum, or do you have a personalized curriculum and meal plan or diet? Because historically, what is fed to our children in school, especially Black kids, it doesn't go with like their body. Just say, for instance, like milk. That's not like a top choice, or like sugars or red dyes. Like, is that under a national?
I follow what you're asking. Very much follow what you're asking. So yes and no. So the guidelines that we follow nutritionally are national guidelines, but those are guidelines like things like keeping the saturated fat down, keeping the sugar content down, and things of that nature. So those are just guidelines. In terms of the actual menu planning, that's local. So we're required as a model to make sure we require ourselves as a model to make sure that we're culturally responsive. So we're trying to make sure that we're introducing the kids to different foods from different nationalities and ethnicities. So we're not just serving chicken nuggets every day and trying to introduce their young palates to things that will create not only expand their palate, but also have a healthy but nutritious at the same time, as well as fun. So we try to combine all those things, and we individualize. So if a parent comes and says, I don't want my child to have cow's milk, then we have a process of being able to plan around that and make sure that we don't provide that child cow's milk. We also have allergy plans for children that have food allergies, and we have a health services advisory committee. So part of that committee, much of it is not only dietitians and nutritionists and pediatricians, but also moms. Those folks are moms too, but moms from our program and dads from our program. So we bring them together. So the same questions that you asked, they put them out in front of our nutritionists and challenge them to make sure that we're being responsive to cultural priorities that they might have for their children. And so we plan our menus here locally at the program level. We don't feed from some national menu planning service.
Thank you. I have another question here. Have you ever thought about putting a child care center maybe on Johnson C. Smith's campus or Central Piedmont? I know that years ago, when I was at Johnson C. Smith, they had a child care center, but they also had a teacher education program.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering if you have ever thought about having because that's sort of a good area to have a center, and I didn't know if you could discuss that.
That's an excellent question. We haven't had any recent conversations directly with the administration at J.C. Smith. And as you said, we did for years partner directly with their education program. Matter of fact, we still have several staff that came through that program that are part of our team now. But as you said, a few years back, they dissolved that program. But we haven't had any recent conversation about a facility. And so that might be an interesting conversation to have. We're looking for a couple of new locations. And so that area is one of the areas that our real estate folks are helping us target. But that's an interesting question. And we are looking to rekindle the relationship with J.C. Smith, because there are many other ways that we could benefit one another outside of the early ed program that they used to have. So that might be one of them.
Even the students that are in, since they don't have education, students that are in some of those other areas like psychology, so they could benefit from working. That would give students jobs also, that they could work in.
Yeah, they have had a pretty good social work program, so we've had multiple staff come through that program as well. So absolutely, not just education, because we are, as y'all know, we're comprehensive.
Thank you.
Is the funding mostly centered around enrollment or the educational aspect? Or what's the majority? What's the most important?
Yeah, great question. That's probably the one thing that I missed from my presentation. I've done this so much I haven't memorized, but I missed that. So we have those multiple levels of funding. The largest comes from the Office of Head Start. And that funding is based on enrollment. It's their income and age. So obviously with young children, we're looking for children that are not going to be 5 by that compensatory school age. So if you're 5 before August 31st, then we are not looking to serve, but all children that are September 1 and back, we're serving them all the way down to infants. And then we do have a small number of expected mothers in our home visitation program as well. So age and income, and again, as we mentioned earlier, we use the federal poverty guidelines. The Office of Head Start has what's called funded enrollment. So our funded enrollment for Head Start, early Head Start is 625. Then we have another 54 students through MEC Pre-K, which we're looking to grow that. So we're just shy of 700 in terms of our birth to 5. And then we have capacity for 120 students in our after-school program. And that is not funded based on slots like Head Start. That's funded based on outcomes. And then the funds that we get from the county and the city, we tell them based on our funding levels, how many students we can serve using our model. So it's kind of inverted. It is income. Once the children are enrolled, the city has, they don't use poverty guidelines, they use the median income. So they're looking for us to serve families at or below the median city income in our after-school program. Did I answer your question?
You did, but I have another one. I thought I was, go ahead. Okay, do you have any programs, like, do you involve parents? Just say maybe any enrichment programs that involve the parent and the child?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do. The biggest one is our socialization program. And that's largely around the infants. So once a month or once every other month, twice a month. Thank you. We have families that their parents will come in with the children, and then we work together with them on different activities. We know that it's better for people to learn while doing. Most people, anyway. I know that's the way I am. And so we create those activities. And so they're learning things that they can then replicate that are literally the same things that our staff are doing while we have the children in our classrooms. We have a new virtual program. We call it Family Fun Nights, but it's really an curriculum extension. So same concept where the families will dial in via Zoom, and then our teachers will actually train them on things that you could do in home using the materials, not even things you go to the toy store and purchase, but stuff you already have in your home, and use them to create learning extensions. Again, similar activities that we're doing in the classroom, because we truly believe that the parents are the child's first and most important teacher.
Okay, are those required? Do you have a requirement, that the parents must participate in some of these interactive activities? Is that required as participation?
Great question. It is not. It is not. It's 100% voluntary. But like each family has a family engagement case manager assigned to them, as well as their teaching teams really do a good job of marketing those opportunities to the families. So we have a fairly high, particularly with the Family Fun Nights, we have a fairly high participation rate. And then we're just about 100% participation in our socialization with our infants and toddler programs.
I have a question. I retired as curriculum specialist for the state of California, so I don't think that I'm criticizing. I just need the information.
Sure.
How do you assess the fact that your children have attained certain levels in your curriculum?
That's not a criticism. That's a great question. So there's a couple of pieces to that. With the younger students, the curriculum that we use is called the creative curriculum. It's created by a company called Teaching Strategies. Well, Teaching Strategies has created an assessment called Teaching Strategies Gold. We train all of our teachers, and then we also have someone external to make sure that our teachers have what's called inter-rater reliability. So they have to be reliable assessors in order to be able to use those assessments to see where the children are, what's called a developmental continuum. So before the children start in really being assessed, we have an initial screening. So all of our children receive there's a couple, because we're transitioning, but the younger children receive an assessment called Ages and Stages. That's a two-parter. One is we talk to the parent about the child and understand what they see in the home, particularly when it comes to the small children. And then we also assess the children's activities, behaviors, and developmental levels within that ages and stages on the teacher side. With the older students, in the preschool, we have what's called a dial 4 screening, where the teacher is working with the child on a number of different skill sets, not only academic, but also social, emotional, as well as developmental. So they're assessing them also in their growth, their movement, their balance, coordination, and their ability to manipulate things with their hands, so their fine motor skills as well. And so that helps us set a baseline with where our young students are, and then they utilize the teaching strategies goal as an ongoing assessment to help provide feedback to themselves about what they might need to work on with that particular student as they put in what are called notes or anecdotal notes on the children's skills and how they're moving along. The system gives the teacher back individualized suggestions on how to work with that student to they may need areas that they have to individualize on and advance, or B, this child many of our students are mastering certain things. How do we keep them engaged and don't lose that development that they're exhibiting? With the older students, we obviously get their reports back from CMS in terms of how they're doing in their coursework, but also we are looking at their integrate testing. But beyond that, in our after-school program, we have a program called New Path Learning, and that's where the children are online, and they're playing games. It's fun, they're engaging, but it helps us assess where they are with certain skills, whether it be early math, literacy, reading comprehension, and things of that nature. And then we also have a literacy assessment that we do. It's a part teacher-driven, part student-driven, and this is a partnership we have with Reed Charlotte that's called A2I. And A2I is similar to New Path, but it focuses specifically on literacy for K-5 students. And so did I answer your question?
Yeah, I have a question too. How many, you don't have to give me a number, but do you require teacher certification for your staff, at least for the main teachers?
Yes. So lead teachers are required to have a minimum an associate's degree in their field for preschool, and our goal is bachelor's degree. So we're beyond the Head Start requirements. We're right at about 82% with bachelor's, and only about 18% that have the AA degrees. Most of our teacher assistants in our program have associate's degrees, or they have child care developmental associates or certifications as well. We only have a handful of what we call teacher aid or floaters that have training and high school education, but our lead teachers all have either the AA, but most of them have a bachelor's degree.
Let me ask y'all, just following up off her question. At 4 years old, what is it that requires a bachelor's degree for 4 years for that group?
Oh, that's a great question. So I need you to come to some of my other presentations, because you teed me up really well. So at that age and even younger, a couple of things. One is students at that age learn through experience and experiment. And so part of it is understanding how to create the environment around a young child so that they can experience and learn through experimentation and play. That takes a high degree of technical skill to understand how to do that appropriately. Then when you're talking about 4-year-olds specifically, most of our 4-year-olds, as most 4-year-olds are, they're verbal. So they're expressing themselves at a high clip. That vocabulary is starting to kick in. And so part of what we're doing is, or what our teachers are doing, is helping to take what they're expressing. Let's say little Tyrone has an interest he's talking about trucks. And so a good preschool teacher will take an interest in trucks, talk about the trucks, talk about the wheels, talk about motion, talk about movement, and start to use his interest in trucks to be able to expand and add on A to his vocabulary, B to his concepts, and also help facilitate his own cognitive development, all while knowing how to use that interest in a way to develop him socially and emotionally, because now he sees that somebody cares about his interest in trucks, but he doesn't know that he's learning all these other things at the time through his interest in trucks. So that takes, so it's not just childcare or babysitting. If you're preparing them for what we call school readiness, then those skills have to be, the early educators have to have those additional skills to expand or scaffold. If you think about building a building, you start with that solid foundation. So our infant and toddler teachers are working on those base skills. It's still very reactive and responsive, but you have to have good skills in order to respond to what the children are giving you. And it's also very care-based at that age. But first 2,000 days, or really the first 5 years of a child's life, that's when all the connections in their brain are really forming, what they call synapses. And so that's the framework or the scaffolding around this building, that when they get into kindergarten, then all of that content knowledge, as we say, children first learn to read and then they read to learn. And so we're building those building blocks and that helping them building that scaffolding. So when they get in school, they can then use that comprehension that they've developed to learn new information.
Have you followed up with any students when they go to school? Have you seen whether they have excelled more because of your program? Do you do anything like that?
That's a great question. Actually, we do not. We are literally in the process of building an alumni program. So in mass, we don't have a tracking mechanism for those students. We're also working with the county and CMS, and this is through no lack of effort on our part, but I won't throw any other organization under the bus. We have now got some commitment from the county to assist us with getting information on our students back from Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. We have not had that, but that's not for lack of trying on our part. We've been at that for a long time, and we're not the only program that is working on that. So the county is a great partner. I'll do that. But that's underway. So we got that off the ground through leadership with some folks that report back to the county commission that's helping us building that bridge. We do, obviously, though, as I'm able to talk about a lot of those ambassadors, we do keep in contact with several folks that have come through our programs, either were former parents or former students. This summer, we have an intern from University of North Carolina, Greensboro, who's a marketing student. His mom was a Bethlehem Center student. His mom came up through the ranks and is now one of our lead case managers. And he was a child in our program. So now he's back to enhance his skills in marketing and helping us launch our annual giving campaign this summer. So we do have lots of individual connections with many of our former students, but we don't yet have a formal tracking program. That's in the works this summer.
Technology. Do you all do, these kids are so, 2 and 3 years old, I see them in buggies, with phones, in the grocery stuff. And I know, mine is 10, my granddaughter is 10, but she knows so much more, but when she was 10, she knew more about it. How do y'all incorporate that, and do they come in that way and understand, they don't even do cursing anymore? It used to be for us reading, writing, and arithmetic. Those 3 things. And now,
you're making yourself large.
Well, what do you what are those basic fundamentals that you teach when they come in at 2 and 3 years old?
As it relates to technology?
Yeah, technology, but you know, reading, writing.
Gotcha. So that's
It's changed.
it has, but those fundamentals really haven't changed, because those basic skills are really the building blocks of life and being able to navigate the platform. I would say that some of the platforms have changed, but the basic skill sets have not. They're pretty universal. So we definitely focus heavily on early literacy. Again, because of that concept of learning to read, then to be able to read to learn, which is an expectation pretty much by the time you get to the second, third grade. They're putting things in front of you, especially happened with my fifth grader during the pandemic of we sent you an email and you're supposed to read it and then work the lesson. So reading comprehension is a big one. So we definitely focus on early literacy, skill building, early numeracy, and some level of social interaction, which is huge in terms of a focus for programs like ours, as well as emotional development, self-regulation skills and things of that nature. And then we start to introduce concepts about the world around them and helping them generate some awareness about that, inclusive of things like science and nature and things of that nature. So we still have all of those same fundamentals, and we don't spend, but there's an allotment of about an hour a day, what we call screen time. We typically don't even do that much screen time. We do have tablets. We don't have one for every student in the classroom, but we do have tablet technology so that they do, because many of our students' families can't afford that type of technology. But as many of you know, as they enter into K-12, they have access to that type of technology. So we are helping them learn at the early stages, those that may not have to navigate that. And there too, we have a program for the 3 and 4 year olds called Cognitive Toy Box. Well, Cognitive Toy Box, again, I've got my tablet, I'm having fun playing games. But as I'm playing games, it's registered in the teacher's computer about how I'm learning and following up on the different things that the games are taking me through. So it's still a learning opportunity, even though they're learning how to manipulate and further manipulate guided tablet technology. But we still are very, very fundamental in terms of the skill building and mastery, and limit the use of technology with the small kids.
I have another question. Is there an opportunity in one of these programs, whether it's NEC pre-K or your program, or just for someone who's well above the poverty level, that they want their children to be in it? I mean, do you have to be, can you have an income of $50,000, $60,000, $70,000?
Yes, that's a MEC pre-K. In terms of 4 or 5 year olds that are not school age, MEC pre-K is universal. So last year they built it to make sure the focus early on was to make sure that all families had affordable child care. So there was a gradual level. They started out where the limit was you could only be up to 200% of that poverty level. So if you think about that 26,000 for the family of 4, then 52,000 was the limit. And then the next year they went up to 300% of poverty. Now there is no income limit for MEC pre-K. It is truly universal at this point. Now the number of slots are limited, but it is truly universal. They do not have regard to income anymore with MEC pre-K.
So it's MEC pre-K free even for everyone?
It is without no charge. So it's not free. It costs, but I know.
I had a principal one time that used to say to the children, they'd go through the cafeteria, I'm free, I get free lunch, I'm free. So one day in the assembly, she says, I want you all to know that your lunch is not free. Somebody paid, you didn't pay for it.
Right.
So no such thing as a free lunch.
Right. Exactly. But no, it is at no charge, no cost to the families, MEC Pre-K, as well as Head Start, same thing, and NC Pre-K for that matter.
I wanted to extend what you were gonna say, as far as our Head Start services as well. Yes, we may go by the income poverty guidelines. However, all people who apply are eligible to receive Head Start services. The key is to make sure we're serving the neediest of the neediest families. We have to show proof and show that we've offered slots to our lower income families before we offer it to higher income families. So it's not to say that we're not going to serve them. There is a possibility, and we are at liberty to serve at least 35% of our funded enrollment can include over income families.
I'm gonna ask because my daughter has 2 in daycare, and I mean, it's astronomical, the cost.
Yeah. So once they get 4, and I suggest if they're not 4 yet, for her to go ahead and start.
One just turned 4
Okay.
last week, so.
Okay. Well, this is the time. Matter of fact, they'll probably shut down enrollment coming mid-July. So there's an interest, but it is without MEC Pre-K is without regard to income.
Okay, are there any other questions? We're coming. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Hey, can you talk about the enrollment component of the recruitment part, so that if you do have a 4 or 5-year-old, what that process looks like, so that we can start that process right now?
Certainly, and I'll let our guru take that.
So the enrollment process, you can do either 2 things. We encourage our families, of course, to use technology. You can go on our website at ac4ed.org to start the online application process. Once the family enters minimal information about themselves, as well as their child that they want to enroll, a family case manager or a family engagement staff will reach out to them to complete the interviewing process, just to gather more information about the child and the family dynamics. Once the application is completed, the family is placed on a waiting list for selection. You can also, and if a family hasn't heard back from anyone, there is a number, a mainline number that they can contact, and the enrollment specialist name is Shanette Smith. She'll be more than happy to assist any family with follow-up with the application. All families receive a waitlist letter to let them know where they are. And we inform parents at the beginning that although they're applying, enrollment is not guaranteed. If there is a selection criteria, there is a selection process. Again, that goes back to stating, we have to serve the neediest of the needy families. And what was the other part of the question? No, I'm sorry. Okay.
And then for MEC Pre-K, there's a couple of ways. There's one website, which I can't remember off the top of my head, that has all 3 programs, Head Start, MEC Pre-K, that will take you to our application. But specifically for MEC Pre-K, go to Smart Start of Mecklenburg County, their website, and you can start the enrollment process for MEC Pre-K there. We've all finally got to the digital age where you can initiate application online, but you can always come in person as well. We will just be opening up our in-person applications this fall again for next school year. But right now everything's either done online or over the phone.
Let me ask you this about that, follow up to that question. When you go to that website and you fill out that application, that's not to one place, but that's for the whole system, right? And they tell you what's closest to where you live.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a map.
Yes, either or.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
We have all of our sites listed.
Oh,
And it tells you, the map is right next to our sites, and it tells you the proximity of where those sites are. So it's up to the parent to choose. But even during the interviewing process, the family case managers have a map as well, and they'll put in the site choice to see how close proximity is of the family is of the center, and if If there are closer centers, the family case managers inform the parents and make sure that they're placed on those waiting lists.
Okay, well, I think we have, I think you have thoroughly answered all of our questions. This
Great
presentation
questions.
was wonderful. I learned a lot, and I think you did. I think our virtual audience has learned a lot. And we want to thank you, both of you, so much for coming in. Just thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you all for having me.